Welcome to Red All Over YouTube, episode 8. I'm Graham Mack, and in my hand is the latest issue of Red All Over the Land, the only Liverpool fanzine that has survived. It's the last one. All of them have vanished, they're extinct, but John Pearman, the editor, has kept this one, Red All Over the Land, going for 26 years. And this is the YouTube version, and I'm just going to bring in a guest who we nearly lost there at the very beginning, and he's back. So we've got a couple of star guests on for this show, and quite a milestone for Red All Over YouTube. This is episode 8. This is the first time we've ever had Liverpool players on the show. The closest we got was a few weeks back when John Seeley's, it was his son or his grandson, John?
Son.
It was John Seeley's son knocked on John's door while we were on the air to fix John's computer. So that was the closest we've got to actually having a player on before. But we do have a couple of the original Shankly Boys who were Liverpool players when Bill Shankly was laying the foundations of the club we know today. So welcome George, Scott and John Stewart.
Thank you. That's great. Nice to be here.
Pleasure to be here.
It's great to have you on. And just before we get to you and find out more about your story and what you've been up to, because you've both had legendary lives, and one of you's been the subject of a book as well, which people might have seen. The Lost Shankly Boy is the book about George Scott and his journey. But John's got just as many interesting stories as George. And I'm sure your book will be out soon as well, won't it, John? Yeah, you got to be working on that. Okay, then. So first of all, John Pearman, how's the new computer?
Well, we've tried it tonight and it didn't work, did it? But it's working on it's working on everything else. It's just getting the camera working.
Yeah, couldn't get. So you're on the laptop. You're on Old Faithful. We know that works.
We're on Old Faithful, yeah.
All right. Well, let's start off. The last Liverpool game was in the FA Cup. Can we talk about the FA Cup then and where it is at the moment? Because Klopp hasn't been that successful in the FA Cup, has he?
Well, he's not been successful, but I don't think. It's not prioritised. Well, it's not prioritised anymore. And I'm sure George knows that was slightly different in 1965 when Liverpool won it for the first time. But to be fair, we've had some not so kind draws. You know, where Manchester United, where Chelsea. We had Premier League sides away from home when I think Manchester City were picking their own, a little bit of bubblegum on the balls and getting teams out from the third and fourth divisions as we used to know them. So, yeah, there's been that. But I just feel now this is the first time, probably since the turn of the century, really. Liverpool now have got a squad of players that can actually come in and play. We've got a goalkeeper now that's an international goalkeeper as the backup to, in my opinion, the world's best goalkeeper. We've now got the world's best understudy. And he's going to be a great goalkeeper. In the past, we've not had good goalkeeping backups. I'm not criticising them, but some of them were way. We
went through a lot too, didn't we, of goalkeepers?
A lot, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, some of them made me think about my career as a goalkeeper, and I wasn't very good. But that was it. But now we've got players. I mean, on Sunday, Jurgen picked the players like Van Dijk. He picked Trent. He had all the players. But he still keeps a little bit of a nucleus underneath where he can bring players on to let them have a go. Harvey Elliott coming back was an amazing. I know we're going to talk about him in a minute, but just seeing him back on the pitch and the reception he got from the crowd was something else. Yeah. We've got a new player coming on, and the reception for Harvey, well, it was almost like a goal had been scored. But 18 years old, and he's got that talent.
Yeah.
Don't want to offend anybody, but he actually reminded me of a young Wayne Rooney. The way he scored that goal, something else. And
the fact that you can see, and you and I talked about this after the match, is that he just wants to play for Liverpool and wants to score for Liverpool so badly.
And we've got him. We had a forward line that well, somebody actually wrote. I can't remember which paper it was. The team we put out would have probably put fear into a lot of other Premier Division sides. So it was a very strong lineup, and Jurgen's not done that previously, but now he
Right.
can, as he's done in the League Cup. He's got players like Tyler Morton who he can bring in. He's got Curtis Jones is playing. The Ox wasn't there Sunday. Thiago wasn't there. Didn't get much of a game, and Fab, but we still got all these players to bring in, and the squad now. It's looks so strong, and I actually think, from what I've read about an hour ago, this could be the first time in a long time Jurgen can say, "I haven't got anybody injured."
Yeah.
I don't think
Yeah.
I don't know if his English understanding he can go that far, but yeah, he's never said them words before.
Yeah.
Full squad to select from.
You
Yeah.
mentioned
So
Diaz there. What did you think of him? I mean, because the spotlight, and we thought it was going to be about Diaz, but it wasn't. It was about Harvey Elliott. But what did you think
well,
of Diaz?
he came on for half an hour, and I mean, the first thing he's got to do is get used to the people around him. He knew less players than I did, so he's
The
got to get
Cardiff
used to all
defenders, I
the.
thought, were pretty tough with him. Actually,
Oh, definitely.
it probably looked like when John Stewart and George Scott were playing. Actually, it was a lot more physical.
No, but
They were not
you
letting
got
him
to
play.
remember they're Welsh and they're more into rugby, so that you can do that in a rugby pitch, I suppose. But no, he's obviously he was only there for just to run some rust out his legs, get him used to playing football in English conditions. And on Sunday, they probably realised if this is English conditions, I'll go back to Portugal. It's
Mm.
the rain, the wind, the cold. We were standing outside, Graham, and we had to seek shelter.
We got soaked.
And
Yeah.
but yeah, we shall see. I think the good thing is we've got Mo coming back. We've got
He was
Sadio won't
training
be there.
today, apparently, according to Twitter. Anyway, I saw that Mo was training today.
Oh, he was out there training. Yeah, yeah, and he'll be playing tomorrow night. I don't think Sadio won't be, but he's allowed his celebrations. But we 2 years ago, if we'd got a couple of players out, we feared for it. But now we've got players to come in, and
Yeah.
that's a good thing. Try and pick the best 11 now. You couldn't do it. You'd be debating it for an hour.
Yeah.
You
And
know.
the kickoff. Sorry, was somebody going to say something then? Did I?
I was just going to say, I hope you're right.
Go on, John.
Yeah, I hope you're right. I still feel that when they lose people through injury in midfield or anything, we're struggling a little bit. And it puts pressure on the defence, which we've seen recently. They've been leaking one or two goals, and I don't like to see it. Going forward, they're amazing, but we do need a few. I think a few more in midfield, stronger players somehow.
Okay, George, would you agree?
Yeah, I just wanted to speak about Harvey Elliott. I mean,
Okay.
I thought it was amazing. I mean, that's the first game I've been to at Anfield for 2 years due to illness. So it was a fantastic day for me with my son and my two grandsons in the cup. And to see that boy after 147 days out injured and to play like that, I mean, he looked like a young snake. I mean, his touch on the ball, his grace, the way he worked, the way he conducted. And the goal he scored, as John said, was just magic.
Really
so
was.
players like that coming through the production line, like Katie Gordon, like Tyler Morton, the future is quite bright, I think, as well as the current. So all credit to Jurgen and the guys at the academy. I mean, they've really got some nice players coming through, which is nice to see. Yeah, I think John's right. We obviously need to keep the midfield tight, but we've got some tremendous players there. When you look at the Henderson and Thiago and the guy Curtis Jones, I mean, Hobbs didn't even play. What a team we've got! I'll tell you what. I mean, it'll take some stopping. We beat the Man City at the Etihad and we're on the roll.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
I mean, it's that the team's that good that the likes of Nat Phillips and Nico Williams have had to go out on loan, so that they can play some football.
Yeah.
Now you
Enjoy
can probably
the football.
can probably relate to that, George, because didn't Shankly once give you 5 reasons why you should leave Liverpool?
He did, yeah. And the problem for me, and possibly for John as well, I don't know, but the problem for me was there was no substitutes.
Yeah.
I was the leading goal scorer in the reserves for about 3 years, played the most games. by a long way. And yet nobody could displace Callaghan or Hunt or St. John or Tom.
Yeah, or any of those five. Yeah, they were the five reasons. Yeah.
And Shankly said, you need to get first team football. It's like some of these boys now, like Nat Hughes and Ed Phillips and people going to other clubs to get first team football. It's no good being in the reserves at the age of 20. I mean, I was gutted when I left, obviously, but I mean, when I thought about it on reflection, it was the right decision, and it did me no harm. I got back to play in Aberdeen, scored on my debut, back home in the first team. So it worked out really well for me, even though my dreams at Liverpool were shattered, much as John's were. We were all young lads together,
Yeah, I totally agree, George. I was a couple of years after you, and when I came to Liverpool, you were established in the reserves, and you had a great career in the reserves. But myself and a few other young professionals, we were struggling to get into the reserves because there was no movement in the first team. The first team in 63, 64, 65, 66 won the First Division Championship. The FA Cup in 65, there was no movement. And it was the same with the reserves.
No. And nobody ever got injured.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they weren't allowed to get injured, were they? It was one of the rules, weren't it in the contract? You're not allowed to be injured.
Oh, they were hard.
Yeah,
But
I remember Chris Lawler walking across Melwood with a limp, and he played 265 consecutive first team games. And Shankly said to Bob Paisley, "There's that Malinga Lawler." I mean, he didn't like you when you were injured.
Oh, it was great.
Well, we'll get more stories about. We'll get more stories about you and working with Shankly a little bit later on, and the rest of your stories. League Cup final, John. It looks like for a competition that people said doesn't matter, no one can get a ticket for it now.
Well, no, it only matters when it's the final, doesn't it? I mean, it's it really is odd. I mean, I don't know why the competition's, if you want to call it, ill-treated, because it gives players a chance to play, and that's what's happened this season. And a final, I don't see it as a day out, because if it's a day out, you don't care if you win and lose. But it's not a day out. It's a day you've got to go there. The team can win a trophy, and Liverpool are the most successful club in England. And on that chalkboard is the number of League Cups they've won. Without those League Cups, they wouldn't be the most successful side in England. Yeah. So it does matter. Nobody. When you add another trophy to it, I think if we win this, it'll be number 49. I think nobody's going to say, "Well, you've only won this, and that." Nobody puts a value on them. It's not. You don't get bonus points for winning the FA Cup, the league, or the Champions League. It's a trophy, and if we win that, I dare say there'll be a few beers drunk all around London and even in Liverpool, definitely.
Yeah, and you've got a ticket, John?
And I've got a ticket. Yeah,
you're going to be there. Yeah, I'm still. I've been on the season ticket waiting list at Anfield. Just in case anyone's thinking of going on this list, I'll tell you my experience at the moment. I've been on the season ticket waiting list for 16 years. And so this week I checked out what my position is on the list. And I am number 14,961. So I tried to calculate when I'll get the ticket. And it works out like this. Now, I'm being super optimistic here, which you have to be, I think. And they're expanding the Anfield Road end. And it's going to be 7,000 new seats. So to be super optimistic, let's say 3,000 of those 7,000 are season tickets. That means my number will come down, because it was 14,961, it'll come down to 7,961, just from the expansion of the Anfield Road end. According to an Echo article I found from a couple of years ago, it said that Liverpool issues around 200 new season tickets every season. So I go up the list by a factor of 200 every season. So if I go up by 200 every season from 7,961. I've only got 59 seasons to wait. Now that's 2 years longer than I've lived so far. I'm 57 now. So when my season ticket comes through, I will be 117 years old. So I'm hoping it's a disabled ticket by that stage. I don't know, but I'll be 117 years old when I get the ticket. Now, I could be ultra optimistic. If Anfield's capacity is further expanded in the next 59 years, let's say another 30,000 season tickets become available. At that point, I'll go straight to the top of the list. And it'll be even quicker if Roy Hodgson's put back in charge. So I don't know. I don't know what the point of the season ticket. They're not taking any more on it, are they? I don't think.
No. It's
I'm not going to get one.
The season ticket used to be the golden goose. If you had a season ticket, it opened so many doors. But no, not now. The golden key, not the golden goose. So yeah, but not so much now.
I don't want to give anything away, but like my father, when I was born, was a season ticket holder, and his two brothers, and he had them right up until his mid-70s, and then they went across to Australia, and he gave them, he transferred them to my brother-in-law, and since then my brother-in-law and sister-in-law have had them, and I think John knows they live over in Loughborough, and they never miss a game.
Right.
So
yeah,
if season tickets are looked after like that, you are going to struggle to get one.
Well, my first game, and I've told John this, my dad used to have a season ticket in the old Kemlyn Road stand, and he used to, I was so small, he'd lift me over the turnstiles and sit me on his knee, so the two of us were in the one seat. But even his season ticket wasn't in his name. I think he bought it off a bloke in the pub, and he used to have to go and see that bloke to send off and have it renewed. He had it for years, but it wasn't even his, So I'm not saying that's still going on, but there are ways and means. So yeah, it's not going to happen, is it? It's really not.
Well, I do know the people who have got your family tickets, John. So yeah, they're good friends of mine. I used to live in Loughborough, and so I see them quite often. Well, we spoke to them on Sunday. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, they're mad keen. They're absolutely mad keen on Liverpool. Always have been.
Well, let's talk to. Sorry, what was that?
Because I've been taking my son to Anfield since he was 7. He's now 53, I think he is now. And when he got to the age of 21, 22, he started to take me. and now he's taking his two sons. So, like I said before, on Sunday there was me, my son, and my two grandsons, one of whom's 19 and one is 17. So it's amazing how the generations go on from that Kevin Keegan days right through till now. And it'll go on forever from here, sure.
Yeah. Well, when I first went, I was watching Roger Hunt. I remember when Keegan came, when Toshak came. I went through all of that on this dodgy season ticket, as it turns out. Well, let's find out more about our guests, George Scott and John Stewart. So, George, there's no disguising it. You're a Scotsman. So, was Aberdeen you grew up in?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I came from Aberdeen as a boy. I was born in Aberdeen in 1944. Father was killed in Normandy before I was born, actually, so I never knew my father. And I came down to Liverpool really in 1960. It was an unusual situation because I'd signed verbally for Aberdeen as an apprentice. That's all I ever wanted to do. I only wanted to play for Aberdeen. That was my local team. Watched them as a kid at school. And my dreams were coming true at the age of 15. They came along and said, we want to sign you as an apprentice, £6 a week, which doesn't sound much, but my father was only earning £9 a week to keep a whole family. So it was 3/4 of the family budget for a boy of 15. So it meant a lot to them. And then we found out that the caretaker at the school that I worked for was a scout for Liverpool, and he jumped in and asked if I'd be prepared to go to Liverpool for the trial. So my parents allowed me to come down. I just thought it'd be an adventure, a bit of a holiday, no intention of signing. Came down, met Gordon Wallace, who we're still friends today, 60 years later. We met on the platform at Lime Street when we were 15. I went into digs for a week at Skerries Road, just by the club. And we played three trial matches, one against Blackpool. I think one was Preston and Everton, the other one. We both scored goals in each of the games, and we had a pretty good week. At the end of the week, Gordon signed as an apprentice at Liverpool, £7.50 a week, and he went back down to South Wales. He's Scottish, but he'd come up from South Wales with a family there. I went to see Shankly, and he wanted me to sign. Him and Ruben Bennett was giving me the third degree to get me to sign. And I said, I'm sorry, Mr. Shankly, I can't really. My parents won't allow me to come all the way down here. And anyway, I've signed for Aberdeen. I've given a commitment to sign for them. And they wouldn't give up. But I said to him, look, my grandmother, she doesn't even know where Liverpool is. And he said, you tell her we're in the second division at the moment, son. But we'll be in the first division next year. And when he said that, I thought, my God, this is a different person, Because my granny didn't know where Liverpool was geographically, but he wasn't interested in that. He was telling me to tell her
where
Liverpool.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the second division at the moment. It will be in the first division next year. So anyway, as a result of that, I went back home and I had a chat with my parents. They weren't very happy, but I'd made my mind up. As soon as I met Shankly, just transfixed me.
Right, really? It was that powerful even back then.
Aberdeen went out the window, and I set off. I was only 15. I remember at the station in Aberdeen, I had a little suitcase, 20 quid in my pocket. My father was working, my mother was in hospital having a minor operation, and my brothers were at school, so my granddad took me to the station, and he'd brought me up since I was a boy with my grandmother and my mother, of course. And he saw me off at the station, and it was horrible, waving all the way, as a train pulled out, waving. It was like one of them films, you're waving to you, and went round the bend and disappeared down south. Unfortunately, he died about 6 weeks later, and I never saw him again. So that was a bad in a way from the time at Liverpool. Wow. And my grandmother died as well a month later. But anyway, life had to go on. Shankly was very, very concerned about it. Sent me back home for the funeral, got that out of the way, and then I came back down and started off from there. Where, Gordon Wallace, myself, Bobby Graham, Tommy Smith, Chris Lawler, we all joined the same week. We were all in the reserves together, came through the A-team, C-team, B-team, A-team, FA Youth Cup. So that's where it all started.
And John, what's your story? Where'd you grow up?
Well, I grew up in Liverpool, exactly in Liverpool.
Yeah.
As I said, my family were all Reds. And I was so keen on football. I played for Liverpool schoolboys, and I played for Liverpool Catholic schoolboys. And then out of the blue, when I was a 15-year-old, I'd been playing football at school. And I came home, and my mum said, there's a telegram here from Bill Shankly. And, Bill Shankly, Christ God.
Yeah.
And I've got it here, actually. And it says, trial game tonight at Melwood, 6 p.m. Would be pleased to see you, Shankly. It's the same, the one and only telegram.
Wow.
And I went and played very well, and I scored a couple of goals. And then I came away, no one spoke to me. And then I was contacted again about 2 weeks later, same again, come for a trial game at Melwood. So I went, again I played very well, and I scored a goal then. Came away, no one said anything. And then I've got a series of letters here from Shankly to my dad. I don't know if you can see them here.
So, yeah.
The first one was, Dear Mr. Stewart, could you let me know when your boy is due to leave school and what his prospects of work are? I'm asking this after seeing him play in a trial game at Melwood. I only wish I could have seen him play in our junior teams at the end of the season. I look forward to hearing from you, Bill Shankly.
Wow.
And
wow.
that was on the 5th of June, 1963. The 11th of June, my dad got this letter. Would you be interested in your boy coming to train with us for a few weeks, starting on the 26th Friday of July? He would be along with all our playing staff. It would give me time to see a bit more of him. And then a few days later, June the 13th, dear Mr. Stewart asked John to come to Anfield about 9:30 a.m. on the 26th of July. Bring any training kit he may have, shorts, jersey, stockings, boots, and running pumps if he has any. Which it was just unbelievable, you know, because he was my idol then as a schoolboy. Anyway, I turned up and I probably trained with the rest of the professional staff for about 3 weeks. And then one day after training, he came to me with a big envelope and he said, "Yeah, son, take that home and show it to your dad," which I did. And it was a contract to sign as an apprentice, which I duly signed. And I had 2 years as a apprentice professional, and then 2 years as a was released. But it was just phenomenal to be there during those days. You know, George will know exactly. He was already an established player there when I first went, so it was amazing.
So what are, and you're probably spoilt for choice here, but what are your lasting memories of Shankly? What made him so special?
Yeah, well, you want talking to me?
I'd like to get stories from both of you, so I don't care who goes first.
Well, okay, well, it was just a special man in every way, really. I mean, he knew what the supporters wanted, you know, and he gave them what they wanted. He used to tell us that these people were in the docks and in the factories, and they came to Anfield. It was the peak of their lives coming to Anfield, and we had never let them down. So he worked for the people of Liverpool. He always used to say they're a bit like the people of Glasgow, you know, hard-working people, honest, you know, and they deserve the best at all times. His favourite sayings I always remember was things like, you know, the greatest thing in the world, son, is enthusiasm. Without it, you're nothing. And he used to say to us that nothing ever happens unless you make it happen. Little saying like that, you know, which stuck in your mind, not just then, but even now.
Yeah.
His lessons in life, really. The way he managed the team, the way he built the team, from the goalkeeper, the centre half, centre forward, two wingers. You know, when he brought in St John and Yates and Tommy Lawrence, who came in the team. Peter, my great friend Peter Thompson, came in on the left wing, absolute genius. Carly was there from the beginning, you know, and nobody will ever beat his record, 857 games, ridiculous. You know, and if any reserve player went to see Shankly, says, you know, or somebody says, "Why am I not on the team?" or "Why are you dropping me? Why are you dropping me, boss?" Have a word with Ian Callaghan, he said. Have a word with Ian Callaghan. I never drop him, do I? Because he never has a bad game.
Yeah.
He was such an amazing man. John,
although they didn't call it
this
back then, he was quite the sports psychologist, wasn't he? He could get in your head and make you feel much bigger than you were, or he could he'd get the best out of you.
He was so
even all these years, sorry, John, go on. Well,
I was just going to say he was inspirational. He, you know, when he spoke to you, you believed you could beat anybody. You know, he used to say, "Oh, you know, we can beat." Like he talked about Everton, and he said a few derogatory things about Everton, but you believe them. You know, you believe that you could go out and beat anyone. And he was so positive in everything he said. There was nothing negative. And as George said, he wanted us to respect the people of Liverpool. For them, you know, he was inspirational. He was a different class.
I think he was way ahead of his time, Graham, you know, as a football manager and a tactician with Bob Paisley and Ruben and Joe Fagan. I mean, they were amazing, really. I mean, they started the push and run, you know, they sort of pass the ball never gets tired. You know, push it round, give it to the man nearest to you. You used to have little triangles, so they played in little triangles and then they'd hit a long ball to the wing. Then more little triangles. Much like they're doing now. You get Trent to hit the ball way over to the left, you know, Andy Robertson. Well, that used to happen with same thing. Keep possession, don't give it away. And if you do give it away, get it back. It's like a high press. You get it back. You never give up. You always chase back. So the whole team played as a team. you got them all playing as a team, you know. And even in the reserves, I mean, the A team, the B team, we all played the same way. There were practice matches on Melwood or at Anfield. And the reserves were very hard games. I mean, you know, the reserves often won because we were out to get them, you know. We wanted to get in the team, you know, so we were not giving anything. A few words now and again, you know, Shanks, but Tommy Smith, you know, he wouldn't take any nonsense. He was hard as nails.
Yeah.
He was a boy in a man's body.
We were always trying to kick you in the reserves.
I know you were. I've still got the bruises.
And didn't George didn't you play in a game, George? And it was a reserve game, and there was another player, and it was an England player, and Shankly said something to you that made you. It's in the book.
Oh yeah, Alan Ball, I think. Yeah, the one Alan Ball when.
Yeah.
I was playing the reserves against Blackpool, and at Bloomfield Road, and we beat them 4-0 and they scored 3. And we came back to Melwood on a Monday, and I'm doing me touching my toes, you know, I'm doing the exercises, and Joe and Bob shouting, and this shadow appears behind me, and there's Shankly, and he just said to me, he said, son, it's a boy playing for Blackpool, play for England, son. He didn't score any goals, and you scored 3. He used to come out with all these things. I remember one thing about inspiration, as John mentioned. I remember when we were playing a game in Melwood. We used to have these cricket stumps for goals sometimes, 5-a-side, you know, just in a wet day. And this was going towards our goal, and I ran back. I just got there in time, slid along the mud, tipped it round the post. Next minute, I feel a hand rubbing me. I had hair in those days, hand rubbing my hair. See what happens, we never give up, son. You see what happens, we never give up. By the way, I ran that distance and just got there. Psychology, you said before, Ben. His subtle psychology was absolutely amazing, I have to say. It's unsurpassed. You know, he was an absolute genius.
But you trained pretty hard as well. What was the Shanks sweat box?
Well, that was the 4 shooting boards. That was innovative as well, John, wasn't it? Because they had 4 boards in a square. You'd go in the middle and you'd hit the ball against one, get the rebound, hit it the next one, get the rebound against the clock. And it would churn up in the middle of it. And so you maybe had 2 minutes, 3 minutes. And they were shouting at you all the time, like you were in the commandos. You know, you've got to keep going, keep going, keep going. And then the next one was 2 boards about 30 yards apart. The goalkeeper would go in goal. The first team forward line would line up. And then Ruben would push the balls in front of St. John's. He would run forward, Tom and Lawrence come out and he'd try and chip him, or delicate stuff. And it went to Roger and he'd bury it, you know. The ball would hit the board and come back, you have another go. So it was good stuff because you give the goalkeepers practice, you gave the forwards practice, you could hit it in the board and hit the rebound again, or you could chip it. And then the reserves took over after that, then the A team. And then they used to have circuit training, you know, where it was murder, you know, you used to have to do a full lap of Melwood while 3 other groups were doing different exercises, like step-ups on benches or weights. And the length of time it took the main lot to go round Melwood dictated the length of time you were on these exercises. So if you were really getting tired, you were wishing for these guys to hurry up, where the guys that were running were taking it nice and easy to have a rest until Ruben got hold of them. And then they had to sharpen up, you know, because he was like a commando as well, Ruben. He used to walk up Anfield Road in his shirt sleeves and he'd say to him, "You're not cold, Ben. You're not cold." "Cold, son. I'm from Aberdeen." middle of December. They're all characters, weren't they, John?
Oh, they were.
All characters.
It was just, they were characters, and it was a pleasure to be there and to experience it all.
And being in Liverpool in the 60s as well, which would have been an exciting place to be.
Oh, well, yeah, we were in digs at Anfield Road with Bobby Graham, myself and Gordon, and Phil Tinney, lads maybe the people wouldn't have heard of, but were great players. And in my book, I talk about 1 or 2 of these lads who were gifted players. We'd have got in any other first team, but because it was Anfield at that time, unfortunately missed the boat. John was one of them, a lad called John Bennett, Phil Tinney. They were really good players. But we used to go into town and watch the Beatles in the Cavern. You know, you go down there and we got the Royal Tiger Club on a Saturday night. You know, Shankly had rules and regulations about drinking. You know, and he was, Saturday night was okay. As long as you didn't have a game on the Monday, you could go out and have a drink on a Saturday night. But I remember one story which is in the book, when Bobby Graham was called into Shankly's office because there was a nightclub on Waltonbreck Road called the Wookie Hollow. And all the stars used to come up there, Shirley Bassey and all them. It was a big nightclub, the Hookie Wallow. And Bobby gets called into Shankly's office and he was worried, sick, he didn't know what was going to happen. And when he went in there, Shankly said to him, he says, "My spies tell me, son, you've been in the Wookie Hollow. Who the hell do you think you are, Errol Flynn?" He actually said Hookie Wallow, not Wookie Hollow. He got his words mixed up. Bobby came out and told us, we couldn't stop laughing.
So then, after Liverpool, John, you ended up in Dallas in the United States. How did that happen?
Well, it was unbelievable, really. I'd finished at Liverpool. I was absolutely devastated. Shanks had called me into his office and said, "Unfortunately, son, we're going to have to let you go." He said, "I can contact a few of the lower teams if you fancy having a go there, for trials or whatever." But I was absolutely devastated, and I said, "Oh, just leave it, thanks, boss." So I finished very early days in '79. And I didn't know what I was going to do. I had a few part-time jobs in between. And then one day, I think it was around about August, I got a telegram from the coach of the Dallas Tornadoes. They were in a training camp in Seville, in Spain, saying, I believe you've been released. If you're free and want to come to America, reply to this hotel, which I did. Next thing is, I was saying I was dead keen, of course. Next thing is, I got a telegram from BOAC telling me to go down to Liverpool to collect the tickets. So
And had you ever been to America?
I'd never been out of England. I didn't have a passport.
Was that be the 10-shilling passport?
Yeah, it was unbelievable. And you could only take £10 out of the country. I've got a stamp in my old passport saying, £10 out of the country. Anyway, I flew down to Heathrow, onto Madrid, and then to Seville. I played about 6 games for them, which were like a trial. And then one day he came up to me and offered me terms, which I jumped at. And what I didn't know when I first went out there, the idea was to go on a world tour, which turned out to be a 7-month world tour. I've got the numbers here. We played in 26 countries. We played 40 games, which worked out about roughly 4 games a week. And now we're traveling the world. We went through Europe, Asia, the Far East, Australia, the Pacific. And it was just unbelievable. It really was. But it was a crazy way. We were supposed to be, the idea actually, we were supposed to be, he was supposed to be making a team up to play in the North American Soccer League. The inaugural game was supposed to be starting in April 1968 in America, and it was the preparation for this. But it was crazy, really. We had no medical supervision, and some of the lads were injured, still having to play with injuries. Some of them were sick, so it was a really, really difficult time. But having said that, it was the most amazing world tour to be involved with it. It was just phenomenal in a different country.
I met a bloke at Anfield on Saturday, and he was talking about one of the places you went, and I've actually got him on the phone now. Graham, are you there?
Yep.
Graham, you were talking to me about one of the places where John went that could have been trouble in the late '60s. Do you remember that? He's got the delay on. He just needs to turn the computer down a little bit. He's listening back to me from about 20
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah,
John was.
Turn your computer down, Graham, and just listen to us on the phone.
Yeah. Yeah. John was telling me all over the years about these trips, and I think there were instances where I think it was India and Pakistan.
And what?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Yeah.
Yeah. I think he had problems. They were going from India to Pakistan, and they got involved with the border guards, and I think it was touch and go whether they were able to cross over. And I think you told us on another occasion you were on a flight or looking to get on a flight to go to Greece. They missed that flight, and the plane was blown up by terrorists. And then the other thing that always amazes me, John, when you talk about you're playing for Dallas Tornado, you're playing in Vietnam while the war was on. And these guys, they had the whole team. When they went to official receptions and the like, they were all wearing light grey suits and beautiful big grey Stetson hats. You know, amazing going through all that.
John, was this South? This would have been South Vietnam, though, wouldn't it?
Yeah, South Vietnam. We were in Saigon.
Right.
We played a couple of games in Saigon. And we played of an evening when it was, you could see flashes in the distance and you could hear explosions. And the ground was surrounded with armed troops. It was frightening. It really was. But the other one that Graham said there is we were flying from Athens to Cyprus, and General Grievous was supposed to be on the flight before ours. Well, we missed the early flight, and when we got to the airport, all the reporters are there. The plane had been blown up over over the sea.
Wow.
General Grievous actually turned out to be on our plane. When we landed, he was on our plane.
And he was the target.
He was the target, yeah. So, you know, it was amazing. It really was.
Yeah. So from there, after the US, I'm sorry, Graham. Do you have another question for John?
Just to say as well, while you were in the States, you got married. I mean, that was like what goes on over here now before social media, wasn't it? He had the Lamar Hunt, who ran the club, a millionaire, and his wife took out. John, it was on TV and everything, wasn't it?
Yeah. Before I left Liverpool, I was caught in, and I'd signed a 5-year contract with Dallas. So I thought, when I arrived there, I thought, I'll send for Chris, which I did. She came over, and she was the house guest of Lamar Hunt and his wife. They were billionaires. They were just unbelievable. And we got married, intending to stay in Dallas. Obviously for the first 5 years and beyond probably. But the way things worked out, unfortunately, he never had the support that they expected. And after the first season, some of the teams dropped out, and Dallas gave us the option either to leave or to hang on without pay to see how things worked out. And then that's when I decided, I'll give it a miss and I'll try Australia, because I'd played in Australia on the World Tour,
right?
And I'd been approached. We went to a reception by the Australian Football Association, and the president of a team called South Coast United had approached me. We played 3 games around Australia, and the last one was in Sydney, and he was there, and he said, if you ever want to come to Australia, there's my card, give me a ring. So when things weren't going well in America, I gave him a ring, and I arranged terms over the phone, and I flew straight out.
Wow.
And I had over 3 years in Australia, which
and
was great.
Why did you come back?
Well, it's a long story, really. My wife didn't want to leave Australia. I'd had a few injuries. I had a cartilage out when I was in America. In those days, you were in hospital for a week, and it took a long time to recover from that. But then, when I was in Australia, I broke my leg, I dislocated an ankle. Albeit, we had a great team. In 1970, we won the Premiership in Sydney. You know, we had a very good team, and it was great. I enjoyed every minute of it. But I was getting to the stage. I was like mid-20s. I'm thinking, you know, what am I going to do if I have another injury? You know, I was starting to worry about what I was going to do at the end of all this. I had no qualifications. I'd left school before taking all my exams to join Liverpool. So I was considering all this sort of thing. So I decided to make the break against Chris's wishes, and came back to Liverpool. But then I thought I'd made a mistake when we came back, and intended to return to Australia. But we had nowhere to live. We were living with the in-laws. But, you know, I was thinking of, you know, where am I going to live and everything. So I joined the police, because the police offered a free house when you join the police. So I joined the police, still intending to return to Australia. But one thing just led to another, and I ended up staying in the police. And it was probably the best thing I ever did, financially and everything else, you know.
Yeah.
So that's why we didn't go back to Australia. I came home and I said to my sisters, get yourselves out to Australia. You know, it's a great country and everything else. And they did. They emigrated to Australia. And then my mum and dad in the 70s, they went and joined them. When they were retired, they went and joined them. And my mum and dad lived till both of them 95. Best thing they ever did. And I went out nearly every year for 20 years to see them, because I kept thinking they're not going to last very long, you know. But they lived, you know, the best thing they ever did, going out to Australia. And I do have regrets, although we've been out so many times. I've got friends from when I played there, and I've got nephews and nieces living all over Australia. So it's our second home, really.
Yeah, well, I lived in New Zealand for 7 years. I lived in Australia for 6.5 years. I got into radio in Australia. I finished up on the Central Coast, just north of Sydney, which you'll probably know, Gosford. Yeah,
I know it very, very well. I've got a friend there, Max Solson, who played for Australia. We played together for South Coast United. And Max, he was always saying to me, I was a big mate of Max, and he was always saying, you and I, we should go into business. You know, we should start building houses and do this and do that. And I kept saying, oh, hey, Max, you know, I'm enjoying myself, you know, we're traveling around Australia and seeing the place. Anyway, Max, eventually, he started building houses. And honestly, he's just made a fortune. And he lives on the Central Coast.
Yeah. I was on 2GO, which is now called Triple M, but I was on 2GO. Was the name of the radio station. Yeah. I was the pommy on at night. Yeah.
Well, great place. I don't know why you left. You know,
I left because I got a job in radio in England. I did the breakfast show in Bournemouth, and then it led me to the East Midlands, to Century at the East Midlands, and that's how I met John. So if it wasn't for coming back, we wouldn't be talking, John Stewart. So it's a good job I did. You know?
Absolutely.
that's how that all worked out. But George, well, Graham, thank you very much for the call.
Yeah, cheers.
Cheers.
Enjoying the chat.
Thank you very much.
See you Thursday.
There you go. Yeah. Oh, there he goes.
John, before you could, all what you've just been saying is fascinating. If you could do an article for the fanzine, I really, really would appreciate it. You know, the whole story. Because it would be good.
Yeah, I bet there's a lot we can get in an article that we haven't got time for tonight that we really expand on some stories.
Those things about the Dallas Tornadoes, it's you know, like I know the American Soccer League at that time didn't really go, but I do know that people like Pele went there, Gordon Banks went there,
Rodney Marsh, George Best, yeah.
Yeah, I played with a guy at Tranmere Rovers who was on that tour.
Oh. Really?
Dave Moorcroft, yeah. Dave Moorcroft was on that Dallas Tornadoes too with Howard Hunt.
Oh, Dave Moorcroft.
Yeah, he played with me at Tranmere. He was on the same tour John was on in America. He played with Dallas Tornadoes. Used to tell me all
was
about
he was on the same tour. Yeah, he was on the same tour, George.
That's right.
He'd obviously played for Scott and won the amateur
They won
cup.
the FA Amateur Cup. He was, I think, he might have been captain when they won the FA Amateur Cup at Skelmersdale. Yeah,
that's
he was
right.
at Everton when he was a boy.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then he went to Tranmere.
And then
I was
he
there for Tranmere with him.
ended up at Tranmere with you. Yeah. I knew that, George. Yeah.
Now, before Tranmere, you were in South Africa, though. But you were there, George. You were there at the height of apartheid.
Yeah, well, there's a story before that, actually, because when I actually left Liverpool, it was a bit of a sorry day for me in a way, because I spent 5 years there and I was on the brink of the first team. And as you said a while ago, that Shankly said to me, it's 5 good reasons why you should leave and that sort of thing. And he also said that I should think of myself as the foundation stone of the Liverpool Cathedral. But nobody ever sees it, son, but unless it's there, the cathedral doesn't get built. That was the last thing he said to me before I left his office, and his arm around my shoulders. So that was very profound. I didn't know what he was talking about at the time. On reflection, I do now, obviously. So I was heading back to Aberdeen. So when I got to Aberdeen, I was straight in the first team, and I scored on my debut against Clyde in the Scottish League Cup after 13 minutes. First goal in Scottish football that season. And then I played against the Rangers, Glasgow Rangers, on the Wednesday night at home at Todbury. 30,000 there, which a dream come true for me, to play at Aberdeen against Rangers. 9 internationals in their team. Willie Johnson, Willie Henderson, Jim Baxter, all those people, and we beat them 2-0, and I laid both the goals on, and I felt absolutely unbeaten. I mean, to beat Rangers 2-0. The funny story, when we got the second goal, I crossed the ball from the right wing, and our centre forward is a lad called Jorgen Raven, who's a Danish guy, headed it in the corner. And next minute, the Rangers fans went berserk, with Kewins cans and bottles coming flying out the crowd, landing all around me. It was quite nasty for a bit, but they all calmed down. We didn't care. We won 2-0. So I was back in Aberdeen and happy really to be back. Then we played Hearts and a few other games, and then unfortunately for me, we were training on the beach before we played Rangers in the return game, and I tore the cruciate ligaments in my left leg, which I tackled from behind on the sand. A lad called Tommy White, whose brother John White sadly was killed by lightning playing for Spurs many years ago. He was a great player, Scottish international. So that more or less finished me at Aberdeen. I didn't really get started. I got into the first team. I was playing really well, looking like it was made for me. And then this injury was devastating. So I was out for about 4 or 5 months. And at the end of the season, much like John said before, they let me go. And like John also, I had no training, no qualifications, no education. Left school at 15. All I wanted to do was play football. So I came back to Liverpool with my girlfriend then, who's my wife now, and has been for 55 years, I'm glad to say. We came back to Liverpool with her in her parents' house in Kensington. And I got myself training out and running down the streets of Liverpool trying to get fit. No club, nothing. I got a job in a factory, throwing ropes around pallets of biscuits in Binns Road, Crawford's Biscuits. And my mother-in-law marched me down and got me a job in there, which was interesting because it was a very unionised factory. And they were all big fans. They knew I played for Liverpool. And even the Evertonians were good to me. They wouldn't let me work. They used to say, have a cup of tea, son, tell me some Shankly stories. So that was about a month or two. And then I got a phone call from a scout from Port Elizabeth, who asked me to come and meet him in Luton, at the Crest Hotel in Luton. And Shankly recommended me through Cliff Lloyd, the Players Union representative, PFA. And when they showed me the photographs of Port Elizabeth, absolutely gorgeous, beautiful dolphins, blue sea, big crowds. Kevin Lewis had gone there, ex-Liverpool player. Kevin scored a couple of goals, got us promoted against Southampton in 1960. And he was at Port Elizabeth. Terry Mancini was there. He played for QPR and Arsenal in later years. So we had an all-British professional team. They were all British, every player. Some really good players. John Fielding played for Southport and Everton. But apartheid was on then, as you rightly say. And I was a young lad. I was only 20. The options for me was an offer from Derry City in Ireland, which didn't appeal to me, especially with the troubles coming up. And Ellesmere Port Town, who I played towards the end of my career with, funny enough. And that's all I had on the table at that time. So the choice of factory or Port Elizabeth, it was a no-brainer for me. So off we went to Port Elizabeth. Carol and I got married the same day England won the World Cup, 1966, July the 30th. And a funny story there, we were in the church, and just as she was saying "I do," there was a big cheer at the back of the church. I thought, oh, that's nice, that's kind. Because I'm down the road, the Scottish family cheering the German equaliser. Yes! Bit naughty, but there you go. So we were off to South Africa, and when we got there, I mean, it was amazing. I mean, we played our home games at St George's Park, where they play the rugby and the cricket internationals in Port Elizabeth. Big stadium. Crowds were 20,000, 20,000 every game. Most of the crowds were non-white. They were fanatics, absolute fanatics.
Because rugby was the whites game, wasn't it? Football, soccer was
well, rugby was a national football league, and it was a difficult situation because I only realised when I got there how bad it was. You know, I mean, the deprivation of people, the way they were treated was horrible. You know, it really was bad. I signed a 2-year contract. I went over there with an open mind to try and just get myself sorted out, really. And it worked out in a way very well because we won the league championship in South Africa. First time Port Elizabeth ever won it. The whole of the Eastern Province went wild, and the townships were all dancing and everything, you know. And it was a fabulous 2 years, really. And I think I was second top scorer on our team, probably fourth top scorer in the league. So I scored on my debut, scored 9 goals in the first 12 games, and just went from strength to strength. And I was so disappointed because the football conditions really suited me. Hard, firm grounds. I was quite quick. And I thought if I'd reproduced that form at Anfield, I might have definitely made the breakthrough because I was playing really good stuff. Anyway, the end of 2 years came, and I had an unfortunate incident where a lad broke in our apartment, and I ended up getting stabbed. And I was very lucky, really. It cut the top off, nicked my chin, and I fell on my back, stood above me with a knife, then turned and ran. So it was frightening. But my wife was obviously very nervous after that, and it was coming to the end of the contract. And we'd only ever signed a 2-year contract. We've always said that we would come home. We had a young baby, he was only 4 months old. He's the one that's 53 now, Gavin. I had a phone call then from a lad in Cape Town who said that our mutual friend, Mr. Sidney Reeks, the chairman of Liverpool Football Club, is in South Africa and has requested to meet with you. So Sid came down from Durban and met me at Port Elizabeth Airport, and all the fans were there. You know, Sid was throwing Liverpool badges to them, and you know, because we just won the league, and I was quite well known over there. And he said to me, "What? Are you staying here or coming home?" I said, "No, Mr. Weeks, I'm going to come home." He said, "Why don't you come home? Come and see Billy." He said, "He'll fix you up with the club. I'm sure he does. He loves you. He'll fix you up with the club. I've been speaking to him." So I came back to Liverpool, my wife and I, went up to Anfield. Couldn't do this today. Went up to Anfield. Roger Hunt's in the car park outside the players' entrance, and he was surprised to see me because he thought I was still in South Africa. Oh, he said, "The boss is in his office. He'd love to see you. Go in." So I went in, walked down the passage, turned right, walked towards Shankly's office, and then he came out of the office. He had a guy called Dave Horridge, I think, a reporter from the Daily Mirror. And as soon as he saw me, he was dismissed. You know, it was Shankly. "Hey, son, you haven't grown." But the sun made you grow. Come in. So I went in his office. He says, "Where do you want to play?" Oh, I had a choice there, didn't I? I could have said back at Liverpool. I could have said anything. That bird had flown. So I said, "Well, anywhere, boss." Really. So,
George, when you were at Liverpool, and possibly John, there's a player there who in the early '60s I took to just initially because of his name, and that was Alf Arrowsmith.
Oh, I'll tell you a funny story about Alf.
And people out there today, Liverpool fans who are not quite as old as I am or as we are, but they would not remember Alf Arrowsmith and what he achieved at Liverpool and how he achieved it, because I've always believed if it wasn't for the fact that Shankly brought him into the side just after Christmas in '64, he replaced Jimmy Melia, and there was a tactical switch because St John moved. Then Liverpool all of a sudden went from strength to strength, and he scored something like 20 goals in just over 20 games. and he was fan. He looked to me at that time. I remember reading there was talk of him being picked for England. And, had it not been for him doing his cartilage, then who knows what he could have achieved. He could have gone on.
He was a major reason why Liverpool won the league. I mean, Alfie scored a lot of goals that season for the first team. And you're right. When he first came, Alfie, he came from Tintwistle Villa, I think it was, a small team in Lancashire. I only paid a few thousand for him. And we all looked at him and thought he's a bit awkward, He didn't quite understand. He was quick and we didn't get him really in the beginning for the first month or two. But his character came through loud and strong. He was a good Lancashire accent, a lovely man, hard-working and talented, and a great striker. I mean, he knew where the goal was. He'd score 4 goals a game sometimes. Amazing. I think he scored 4 against Derby, didn't he, or something?
He did in the FA Cup. Yeah.
He broke his leg.
Yeah.
No, I mean, when I do my after-dinner talks, I do it for charity, by the way. I don't make any money. I do it for blood cancer. And when I do an after-dinner talk, I talk a wee story about Alfie. And it's like a little bit embellished, but it's basically true. Tommy Lawrence kicks his ball out from the Anfield Road end. We're playing Sunderland. Charlie Hurley, centre-half, big lad. He jumps up with Alfie right in front of the actual players' tunnel, because Alfie's in the team in places and John was injured. No substitutes. Alfie jumps up with Charlie Hurley, the bang heads. Alfie goes down, out cold. Hurley gets up, shakes his head, runs off. Bob Paisley comes on with the magic sponge, and the little limp he used to have, Bob, and he came over, he's got the magic sponge, he's got the smelling salts. Alfie's just completely out cold. Shankly's getting really nervous, he's getting really worried because just before half time, he can't continue, they're down to 10 men. So Shankly shouts across to Bob, Bob, is the boy going to be able to continue? Is he okay? Bob turns round to me and says, I don't think so, boss, he doesn't know who he is. Shankly says, tell him he's Pelly.
I can remember Roger Hunt telling me a story about him. I went to a supporters club function and Roger Hunt was there and we were speaking afterwards and I mentioned Alf. He said he always remembers one game that they were playing and things were totally different then. Anyway, it was an away game. So the players didn't all meet at Anfield or Melbourne or anything like that. They actually picked him up in Ashton underline on the way. Yeah. And Alfie sat down on the front seat next to Roger and they went past what was a working men's club or a social club. He says, I were in there last night and Shankly just turned around and looked at him. And that was a Friday night before the game. Yeah. And Roger said... I won't be disrespectful. He said it wasn't the brightest spark, but he said, "Wow, could he score goals?" And I think the nicest thing was I think it was 1998. He rang me up when I was lived in Loughborough. He rang me up. We had a chat. And he was going to come up to Anfield. Unfortunately, something went wrong and he couldn't make it. And Brian Hall had fixed it all up where we were going to get tickets for him, but he couldn't make it. So I didn't get the chance to meet Alf. It was just the name Alf. Because at that time, there was people like in the comics, the kids' comics of that day, Alf was always a character.
It was. Well, I'm still in touch with his daughters.
Give them my regards.
When we did the book launch at Taggy's, Jeff Golding and myself, there was 150 there, and his daughter came up. She was there, she's a lovely, lovely person. She's an actress in London, actually. And he's sadly missed Alf. He's such a lovely man.
Well, we were on the way to a pre-season friendly a couple of years back, and we went through Tintwistle, which is where he played Tintwistle, and I believe he scored something like I don't know, 50 odd goals a season for them, but that's how it was in them days. Yeah.
Well,
what Shankly said, he was born to score.
Well, he was the only one in '63 scored more than me for the reserves. He had a couple more than me.
Yeah.
And I used to say I was the leading goal scorer for 3 consecutive seasons, which it was. But on reflection, on the second season, '63, Alfie beat me by a couple of goals. So I mean, but we played a lot of games together. Alfie and I, Gordon Wallace, Bobby Graham. We had a great.
just a shame that back then.
Our reserve team would have gotten a first team anywhere else.
Well, like you both know, back then,
team.
if you had a quarters injury, it was almost like the final nail, wasn't it? There was. It was different. Today, you're out for a few
Bob
weeks.
Paisley used to have Bobby would be playing five-a-sides. I don't know if John remembers this. We'd playing five-a-sides. His cartilage would come out and put it back in. He'd be playing
yeah.
And stop. And all right.
Yeah, there's a guy who used to play for. A guy who used to play football for me. He used to do that. He used to, before a game, he'd just go down, fiddle his knee, then bring his bandage up over it, and he'd just put his cartilage back into place. Yeah. So
that was when real men played football.
Alf was a great player. Great player.
We go back to when I was playing at Tranmere. Shankly got me to Tranmere, right? So when I went across, Shankly's like trying to phone David Russell up, the manager, and the phone call went something like, "I've got a boy here just come back from Africa. Oh, best player ever to play in my reserve team. He scored 20 goals a season." All this stuff, And Dave Russell must have said, "I can't afford to sign him, Bill. You can't afford not to." Next minute, he leans across the desk and he says, "Take your boots to Prenton Park. You're on a month's trial, first team wages." Now, I'd just come back from South Africa. Dave Russell didn't know who I was. I walks over to Tranmere, Prenton, and he was only a small baby, a little tit for hat on. And he said to me, "Chris, I hope you can play." I said, "Oh, Shankly's not good enough for you." He says, "Oh, well, you've got confidence. I'll give you that." He said, "Do you know what? He put me in the first team. I'm only 5'6". I won him a drover. I always said if I was 5'9", I'd have had 50 caps.
But he put you in the first team without seeing you play.
He put me in the first team on the Wednesday.
Just on Shankly say so.
Just on Shankly say so, and it was against Derby County, who the next year won the league. Hector, Hinton O'Hare, Shilton, Gemmell, Farland. They came to play a testimonial game for Alan King, I remember the squad, at Prenton Park on a Friday night, 14,000 there, and he put me in the first team. And I remember, I came back from South Africa. It's out of season because in South Africa the football season's in our summer, so I knew I could do 45 minutes definitely, and I knew I had one chance. And sometimes in life you only get one chance, and you have to take it. You must have known that with your radio career when you're doing these auditions and things. So that was my audition. So when I came onto the pitch, the first half, they must have thought I'd signed Kelly. Absolutely unbelievable. And nutmeg Dave Mackay. I won't even tell you what he said to me. But when I went in half time,
I don't want to know.
What hospital? He said, "What hospital do you want to wake up in, son?" He's a real hard man. So anyway, I faded a bit in the second half, but I had a brilliant first half. They signed me on a 2-year contract at half time. First team contract in 1968.
At half time?
So at half time, Norman Wilson, the secretary, came in to the dressing room. "George, sign here. 2-year contract." So that was my life changed. I come back from South Africa, back to England, to Merseyside. My wife's from Merseyside. We bought a house on the Wirral with the money I'd made in South Africa and before, and it changed my life completely. And I played about 55 games for Tranmere. I loved it. Played in the first team for 2 seasons. And then I decided, like Johnny just said before, no training, no qualification. What do you do with the rest of your life? Our generation, not like now, they can retire at 21 if they wanted to.
Yeah.
The likes of us, we just had to find something else to do. So by the time I was getting 28, 29, I realised I didn't really want to carry on playing at Barrow and Torquay United and wonderful clubs though they are. I thought, well, this is not what I really would like to do with the rest of my life. Got to find something. And so in my case, I saw an advert for a job as a sales representative with Nestle, a big multinational company. And this is where Shankly comes in again, because I went to the interview with no expectations at all. I had no experience in sales at all. Walked into the Adelphi in this big room there, all these guys with collars and ties, smart-looking guys, young executives, and I just thought, no, I can't do this. Turned around, walked out. I get down to the big pub on the corner by Lime Street, and something said to me, "What would Shankly do? He wouldn't give up, would he? What would he do?" It was almost like he was talking to me. And I turned around and I went back, and I went all the way down to the final 4. And the guy said to me, I remember, he said, have you got any references? So I pulled my reference out from Shankly. And this is an amazing reference. It's meant a lot to me over the life. It actually says, dear people. Now, if you write a reference to somebody, you normally say, dear sir or madam.
Yeah.
This one says, dear people, with a small p. Didn't even put a capital P on it. One finger typing on the Olivetti. And it says, dear people, George Scott played for my football club for 5 years, from 1960 to 1965. During that time, he caused no trouble to nobody. I would stake my life on his character. And it's signed W. Shankly in red ink. So that was my diploma, if you like, from university.
And,
You know,
and what a story the interviewer's got. He's going to say, I had a fella in today, said you got any references? And he had this one from Shankly. But it wasn't just from Shankly. It said he'd stake his life on him.
You know what he said to me? He said, is that genuine?
Amazing.
Oh, but, well, I'm sure he would have done. Yeah, anybody would have done.
He thought it was a forgery. You know, I said, that's genuine. There's a crest. Look, it's only 1966. There's a date. You know. So I got the job. Now, that gave me a job with a company car. And I went to Tranmere and I said, look, I want to go. And they never had this before. Players were all taking the mickey, all saying, oh, you'd be going driving around with a milky car. You know, the way footballers do. They all know the banter, you know. But now, so there's a lad called Stan Staunton, whose brother Trevor Staunton played for Liverpool in later. And Stan went to Ellesmere Port Town as manager. And he said to me, well, if you come to Ellesmere Port Town, I'll give you a 3-year contract, £20 a week in the season, £10 a week in the summer. And I had a job paying £30 a week with a company car. So I was far better off than any of the Tranmere players. And I was building a future. That was my view in sales. So I quickly went up the sales ladder and everything from there went great, you know. That's all in the book, the rest of my life in sales and what happened. But, you know, it was all due to Shankly, really, in many ways, all of it. I mean, he pulled me to Liverpool. He recommended me to Aberdeen. He recommended me to Port Elizabeth. He recommended me to Tranmere. He made me think about what I should be doing when I was walking away from a job. And even today, and when I became a sales manager in later life, I tried to run my sales teams like Shankly.
Yeah.
You know, find people doing the right thing, not the wrong thing. Treat them with respect. Motivate them.
And do both of you find, having been influenced by such a powerful presence at such a young age, do you find yourself, when you're talking to younger people, like speaking as Shankly?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, yeah, I do really. Yeah, I do. I mean, I don't know what it is. It's just something in my mind. It just takes over. It takes over somehow. It's got in the brain somewhere. When I was a kid, I didn't have a father, so you know. Well, I had a stepfather, a lovely man. I was wrong when we say that. He was a great man. But Shankly was like a father figure to me, and to the other lads, I think, at that age, you know. That came.
Do you find that, John? Do you find that you end up speaking to young people and trying to influence them like Shankly influenced you? Not because it sounds like he didn't just influence you as players; he influenced you as men and as citizens and as people, and what you know, your place in society.
Absolutely. I would like to think that I followed his example. I really would. But I also, like my father, was a similar sort of gentleman, really. He was an amateur a boxer in Liverpool, well known in Liverpool, and he had so many good points about him, and hopefully I have, you know, I've done the same thing in my lifetime. I hope so. Shanks was amazing, though. He really was, particularly with the football. He was inspirational. You know, he was a different class. He really was. And George obviously had a lot more to do with him. I think because he was a Scottish lad and everything else. I didn't have the same contact with Shanks as George did. And I don't think many of the players did. I think George was he was one of his favourites in many ways.
Well, I've got Rob on the phone who's got a question. Rob, are you on the phone there?
Yeah, I am, Graham, yeah.
You've got a question for George, or a couple of questions for George.
Well, the thing is, George and John, yes, firstly, George, your book is absolutely brilliant. Really takes me back as well as a kid growing up around Anfield.
Thank you.
It's the legendary, all the stories that come out in it that John and you can both relate to is
the building up of the players with the meat going, the lads were on a bit on the skinny side and stuff like that. Now, I've got a personal thing with that because my uncle and my dad worked for my uncle on Oakfield Road, and they had 2 butcher's shops, and I used to get tickets from people coming in from the club. So I just wondered whether there was any tally if you knew that.
What was that? Is any what?
So to get this straight, Rob, the club were exchanging tickets for meat to feed the players.
Well, I don't know because
No.
George touches on it in the book. You actually some players like John McLaughlin and in the later days Phil Thompson had to be built up, Dave Verkler, and they must have had to get the meat somewhere from around the ground and stuff like that and get them cooked up, give them a couple of steaks, put a few more pounds on them.
And where was this butcher's, Rob? How close to the ground was it?
It was on Oakfield Road, just on the opposite side to the Sandon.
Right.
They had 2 on Oakfield Road and 1 on Priory Road.
So more than likely that's where they would have got it from.
Yeah, well, I actually got the ticket stubs now as guests, in the mid.
So tickets were changing hands in that butcher's. Well, whether it was in exchange for meat, we're not 100%, but it's very suspicious.
Yeah, well, I think I even got.
I thought you were talking about a story in the book about one of the players being built up. I'm sorry, I'm talking across you. I'm sorry.
Go on, George. Sorry,
No, I thought you were talking about a story about one of the young lads that Shankly kept feeding steak to all the time. It's a story that I tell, Tommy Lowry, when he kept getting, he was very small and thin and a great player, great potential. And Shankly and Paisley decided to feed him steak and tell his landlady that he needed to be getting steak, as much steak as possible for as long as possible. That's right. So over 6 months or so, he started to put a bit of beef on, the player. And then it got to a stage when, after about 9 months, he was getting really looking strong and looking if he was going to break through. And I knock on Shankly's door, and there's the lad standing outside the door, and Shankly says, "Come in, son, come in. What can I do for you?" He said, "Well, can I have a clubhouse, boss? A clubhouse? Why do you want a clubhouse, son? I'm getting married, boss. You can't get married, son. You're married to football. You can't get married. Why are you getting married? Your girlfriend's pregnant, boss. Says Bob, we've created a monster." That's what Shankly said to you. The steak diet, we've created a monster. That's an impressive the story. He's probably John's referring to.
Yeah.
Very fun, really.
But,
I know when.
Thing was,
I'm sorry.
Go on.
Go ahead, Rob. What is it? What's the other thing?
Yeah. No. It was just I've spoken to JJP about this other book that I've just read now, and I think you, some way, George, you've got a credit in it, and it's called Red or Dead, about Shankly.
Oh yeah, I gave some advice to the author. Dave, he ran a long chat with him. I am in the credits for that. I remember that. I think that was a few years ago. I've only just read it. It's 700 pages, and it's just like when you're listening to it. It says it's a book of fiction, but it's not when you listen to it or when you read it. You can hear Shankly and all his quotes coming out. You can. It's a brilliant book. Yeah, I remember it very well. I've got it actually. Yeah, it's a great book. Yeah. He wrote the Brian Clough one as well, didn't he?
Yeah, that's it. Damn United. But what John has shown us before with all the letters from Shankly, that comes across in the book as well about things like that. He was all constantly at his typewriter, replying to letters and stuff like that.
I've got a letter from him. It says it's written to me from England, from Liverpool when I was in South Africa after I met Mr. Reeks, and telling me to come and see him, when I came home. And the letter ends with his phrase. He said, "By the way, we're still winning the 5-a-sides in the car park. How can we lose? We've got 5 referees in the team." I could show you. It's next door. That's exactly as he said. When you come and see me, I'll get you fixed up with the club. By the way, we're still winning the 5-a-sides in the car park. How could we lose? We've got 5 referees in the team, which they did. I mean, they were cheats.
Hey, John, thanks. Sorry, Rob. Rob, thanks for being part of the show. Thank you very much for calling in.
No problem. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Cheers, thank you. John, were you about to say something there? Did I cut you off at one stage?
Well, when he was talking about building players up, I know when I was an apprentice, we used to go to a place in Bootle to collect the food for when the professionals came back. And if there was any food left over after dinner, Shanks used to say then to certain players, you know, so and so, you need a bit more food, you know, you finish this off, sort of thing, you know. He was always, yeah. And as George says about Tommy, he did need building up, but he was a great player, and he had a great time at Crewe, I believe, after he'd finished.
Yeah, about 300 games for Crewe.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah. Well, we've had some messages come in on the text as well. Steve Wilson, he's watching in Austin, Texas. He says, amazing story about John being spared on being on the plane that suffered a terrorist bombing as part of the tornadoes. So thanks a lot for getting in touch, Steve, on that one. Derek Mailer says, Alf Arrowsmith, did he get 4 in cup matches similar to Bobby Graham and Gordon Wallace?
He got 4 against Derby County in the third round of the FA Cup in 63, I believe. 64, sorry. 64.
Yeah,
64.
So John and George, what are you up to these days? Bring us up to date then. I mean, you're an after dinner speaker, George, and you've got the book, The Lost Shankly Boy. What else do you get up to? There it is. Look, there's the shameless plug. Get it in there. There it is.
Look at the hair. No. Funny enough, when that book was actually published was September 2 years ago, 2020. I met Jeff Goldman. You've had him on your show, I think, Jeff. He's a lovely, lovely man and a great writer. He's actually written 6 books. And we met up at the Shankly Hotel because he'd seen a few articles I'd written online. And we're just having a pint watching West Aston Villa in Liverpool. It was the game when Manny scored a late winner, right in extra time, 1-2-1, away from home. And that day, he said, I want to help you write. There's a book here. And a lot of people have said to me for a long time, you should write a book, you should write a book. And I'd written it, but I'd never taken it to anybody. I had it all there. And Jeff and I worked together for about 6 months. We only met 3 times, I think, at that time. It was emails back and forth. I would send them, and he would. So the book came from that. So they published it, Pitch Publishing, in the 20th of September. Unfortunately for me, there was a pandemic on. Even more unfortunately for me, I was admitted to Broad Green to have a 5-way heart bypass. So that put me in intensive care for 10 nights. I came out of there, and then Christmas came and went, and then I got myself back to 100%, and I was ready to start playing golf again. And a week before I played my first round of golf, I was struck down with double bacterial pneumonia. So I was taken into Arrow Park intensive care. 17 nights in there, and on the 4th night, my wife and my sons were brought in virtually to say goodbye because they didn't think I would make it through the night. They thought my oxygen levels were dropping alarmingly. The bacteria, they couldn't establish what it was. My immune system was fighting the infection, and it was looking really, really bad. That's a sign I do not resuscitate order. But then, again, this is where Shankly comes in. The fighting spirit. I wasn't going to let them beat me. I wanted to go to Glen Eagles with my son in October because he was taking us there, and I focused on that. And I got the mask on. COVID. I didn't have COVID. I was never diagnosed positive for COVID. It was double bacterial pneumonia, community acquired, very unlucky. And I got this CPAP mask on for 10 nights, and I just breathed and breathed and breathed. And he said, you must keep breathing, you must keep breathing. Don't give up. I never gave up, and I got through it. Came out of hospital on the 1st of May. I lost 24 pounds in weight. I couldn't walk the length of the living room. Now I'm playing golf 3 times a week, walking 10,000 steps a day, 100% fit. My heart's as good as it was 40 years ago. My lungs are clear. So it just shows you, if you never give up, as Shankly said, you can get through these things. So that's the story behind the book. So what I'm doing now is I'm playing golf 3 times a week. I'm dealing with people like the lovely John Pearman and Jeff Golding, and I'm getting loads of letters and stuff from all over the world about the book, which has given me a bit of a lift as well. So life's good.
Great. John, what are you up to? Well, John Stewart, what are you up to these days?
Well, similar to George, I retired quite early from the police, mid-50s, and I wasn't going to do anything. I was going to play golf, but I soon got fed up of that. And I got a part-time job at the courts, which I did for close on 12 years. And now I do, like George, I play golf 3 times a week. And I love that. But I think it was probably 2014, we had a reunion for the Dallas team back in Dallas. And players came from all over Europe, Scandinavia, Holland, from England, and it was great. And the club supported it, and it was well broadcast. And we decided at that time to write a book. And one of the Dutch guys wrote this book with an input from all the players. You can probably see it there.
Yeah,
The amazing.
Yeah. So there's a book of that tour that you were talking about.
Right.
Wow, great. And so it's called The Amazing. Hold it up again, John. Let's just see it again. It's called The Amazing World Tour of the Dallas Tornado 67-68. And who's it by and where do we get it? Amazon, all the usual places?
Well, it may be. This was produced. It's been produced a few years ago, and there were only 1,000 copies made. We paid for it ourselves, and
right.
And we weren't experienced in how to sell it.
Well, George will let you know. He's got a worldwide bestseller, and John Pearman will publicise it and read all over the land.
Yeah.
There's some brilliant pictures in that book, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, it tells the whole story about how it all came about, how Lamar Hunt had been watching the World Cup in '66 and decided, it'd go well in America. The family owned Kansas City Chiefs and World Tennis, basketball teams, and they were into the sport.
The John Henrys of the day.
Sorry?
The John Henrys of the day.
Yeah, they were. Multi-millionaires, weren't they? Billionaires.
Well, his father, H.L. Hunt, was reputedly the richest man in the world. The family tried to corner the world silver market after I'd left Dallas, so it must have been the late 70s, 80s. But Bunker Hunt and H.L. Hunt, Lamar Hunt, and a few other brothers, they tried to corner the world silver market. The American government heard what was going on, and they put a load of silver out onto the open market, and the price
I see.
Through the floor. And they lost $5 billion overnight, but they're still a very, very wealthy family. They got buildings in Dallas, and but a nice family. They looked after us really well.
Sounds like it.
Yeah. Well, guys, it's been.
I've got to say, I still play golf now with Gordon Wallace. Gordon and I still play golf together. I'll tell you one little story before we finish. Gordon and I played golf with the late Tommy Lawrence and Roger Hunt. Wonderful, wonderful day at Lee Golf Club about 4 or 5 years ago, and we played for £1. And Tommy his handicap was a bit suspicious, but we let him away with it. So we played for £1, and at the end of the game, we go in the clubhouse and we're talking about Shanks and remembering all the old days and everything. And we got up to leave and shook hands. And as I was walking out the car park, I shouted to Roger, "Hey Roger, have you not forgot something?" "What is it?" He said, £1. "What about £1? You owe us £1. He said, "Bloody Scotsman," he says. He's a Scotsman with a Welsh accent, and you're the genuine thing. And he threw the £1 to me. And I caught it and I said, "Hey, Roger, it's not every day you win £1 from a World Cup winner, is it?" That was a lovely day. God rest his soul.
I can tell you a little story, George. I was playing at Sandyway with a couple of other chaps, and in front of us was Roger Hunt, Gordon Banks, and a member of our club. And we caught them up on this par 3, and they waved us through. The first lad in our group went, and he knocked it to the back of the green. The next lad went and left it short, and then I knocked mine for about 6 foot from the pin. We go down there. They're still waiting on the next tee, going to allow us to go through. The lad at the back of the green knocked it in for a 2. The lad who was short chipped it in for a 2, and mine did a horseshoe round and came back out. But we had 2 2s and a 3. And funnily enough, when we walked onto the tee, the lad who was with them, he knew I'd played at Liverpool, and he said, Roger, this is John Stewart. He played at Liverpool in the 60s. And I started talking, and we must have been standing there for about 3/4 of an hour talking about issues of, when we were at Liverpool. And it was fantastic, it really was. And he introduced me to Gordon Banks, who seemed a really lovely chap.
He was. I met him.
Yeah, he was. So that was amazing, actually, to meet Roger there.
Yeah. Well, it's been great having you on, and continued success. And John, you need to get that book out to more people. Continued success with your book as well, George.
Thank you, Jeff.
It's just been so great having you on. And like I say, you are the first actual Liverpool players we've had on Read All Over the Land, or Read All Over YouTube. This is the fanzine. It's been out for 26 years. This is the latest issue. Anything you want to say about this issue, John Pearman, the editor, or anything about what's coming up soon with the fanzine?
No, we're just hoping that we get some decent weather.
You've got the Facebook thing happening though, haven't you, John?
Sorry?
Got the Facebook thing happening soon.
Yeah, we've started our own new Facebook page. We've got current Facebook pages, but we're trying to get one that's totally independent, and it's read all over the land. So that's underway now.
Okay, next game is Thursday night against Leicester. What do we reckon? It's at Anfield, but the Leicester fans do you think they're going to get a hard time after their behaviour in previous meetings?
Well, I don't know about the fans getting a hard time. I hope the team get a hard time.
Oh yes,
and I just hope Leicester play like they did on Sunday, because that was a disgraceful performance. And fair play to Nottingham Forest, they were brilliant, but Leicester were absolutely awful. And I sense a little bit of Brendan Rodgers. Like it was the season after we nearly won the league. Leicester last season won the cup. They won the Charity Shield. It's still a trophy, it's on the board. But now things seem to be going a bit downwards. So yeah, they can make a recover a bit. Not on Thursday. But all we want to do is spread the word about the fanzine, George and John, and tell people if they do see this poor miserable wretch standing outside the main stand, that's me.
Well, I tell you, it's a brilliant fanzine. It really is. I've been looking at it for a long time. The son watches it. He reads it as well, and it's just so funny. Some of the stuff in there is just wonderful. Very related to the club and all the things that are going on, and I'd recommend it.
Yes, I'd agree with that, John, and I certainly will give some thought to doing a piece for you to put into the magazine as well.
Well, I'll speak to you separately about the Dallas book, and we'll see what we can do. Yeah.
Great. Okay, John. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, lads. Been a pleasure.
Thank you very much, Graham. Thank you very much, John. Yeah, great to see you.
Thank you.
Thanks to everybody. That's Read All Over the YouTube. If you didn't watch it live, and you know somebody that might like it, the same link that gave you the link to the live stream, that's where the recording, within minutes, a whole recording of this show will be on YouTube, and it stays there. I don't know, all the previous 7 episodes are still up there for you to watch. So if you want to see Alan Green or Brian Barwick or any of the other guests we've had on, check them out. If you know people who want to have a look at John Stewart and see what George Scott did on the show, to give them the same link, and it stays up there for ages. You don't have to watch the show live, but of course live's where you can interact on the phone now, and also on the text. Read All Over that. When is the next issue out, John?
Well,
this is the current one.
Well, this one's just come out, so the next one might be out just before the cup final.
Just before
Depends
the cup
on the
final.
weather.
Okay, all right. Thanks to everybody, and can I say a special hi to Joe and the team at St John's Ambulance on the Cop, who were just amazing on Sunday. They were just really good. So thank you very much, Joe. Thanks to everybody that's been involved in the show tonight, and as always, you'll never walk alone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.